Welcome, everybody. Let's start with self-introductions, starting to my left this time.
Kevin Rohani, City of Oakley.
Heather Ballinger, City of Walnut Creek, and City County Engineers.
Jerry Fay, Contra Costa County.
Steve Kersavan, Brentwood, California.
Michael Tanner, BART.
Larry Peace, City of Orinda.
Paul Reinders, City of Pittsburgh.
Eric Hughes, City of Pleasant Hill.
Leah Greenblatt, WIC Tech.
James Inkamp, City of Lafayette.
Abhishek Parekh, City of Concord.
Lori Reese Brown, WIC Tech, and City of Richmond.
John Cunningham, Contra Costa County.
Okay, those in the audience, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Matt Kelly, CCTA.
Stephanie Hughes, CCTA.
Ole Olson, Bike East Bay. Eric Bird, Caltrans.
And welcome, Brad. Just in time. Well, welcome all. Moving on to public comments. Any public members of the public that wish to speak to items that's not on the agenda? Going once, going twice. All right, moving on. Approval of summary of actions. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve it. Second.
All right, moved by Steve, second by Jerry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, rolling on. Consent calendar. Do I have a motion to move the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Moved by Steve, second by Paul. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, I'm on Steve's record pace, I think. All right, regular agenda item number 3, project monitoring. Stephanie?
Good afternoon, everybody. If I can fix this mic. So for the monitoring item, you'll notice that the OBAG 2 projects are added. So on page, starting from 3-5 to 3-8. So all the projects that have a blank field for project approval date and TIP, those are the new OBAG 2 projects. So what's happening is MTC Commission approved the TIP amendment, but it still has to go through the state and federal for approval. So though there is a project ID, TIP ID assigned, it's not formally approved in the TIP. So that's why it's blank in that column. And also we've sent out, or Brad sent out an email notifying all the project sponsors that it's like most likely all your projects have moved out a year or two because MTC doesn't have capacity for the funding in the year that we requested. So a lot of the projects got moved out at least 1 year. So you might want to check either in Brad's email, I think he included a memo on this table to see what year your project ultimately ended up in. And also it affects the whole Measure J. A lot of these projects have a Measure J, TLC, PBTF attached to them. So just make sure you're aware which year you guys are now programmed in for your projects. Also, just to highlight, for these OBAG 2 projects, there are a few requirements that need to be met before MTC will give you the money for your projects. There's a few that are coming up March 1st for this online housing law survey, as well as a highway performance monitoring system data request. That's also March 1st. And then there's local streets and roads assessment survey due on March 31st. And there were a couple of them they're going to be due in April. So just make sure you guys are following those deadlines in order to get your funds when you need them. Other than that, I think that's my update. Oh, and then I just want to send a reminder for the 2019 TIP. I sent out an email to all the SPOCs to review your current project in the 2017 TIP and make sure to see if you have any changes to these projects or if they need to be archived or if you have any new projects that will be moving forward in the year of the 2019 TIP to add new projects in there, anything that's non-air quality exempt. So,
Paul?
Through the chair. So as I understand it, we don't have as much CMAQ funding because we attained our air quality goals for the Bay Area. So our CMAQ funding is reduced. Did I understand that correct?
Right, yeah.
So what was the incentive to attain our air quality goals?
So Brad can probably answer that question.
The thankfulness of the people of the Bay Area.
Health.
Yes, yes. We're roughly losing $8 million a year, the region is, in CMAQ funding. A lot of the projects, if you look at the tip, have a combination of CMAQ and STP funding. Even if we put all STP or all CMAQ, sometimes MDC shifted the funding around a bit to match their own programming needs.
Thanks.
Brad, while you're out there, I guess I have a quick question. Now, with the federal funds potentially pushed out a year or maybe even two, I know you worked pretty hard to line up the Measure J portion on the funding for some of these projects to line up with our needs. Are you adjusting those, or are we just kind of saying, okay, Measure J funds and technically could be available a year early and we just kind of use it when we need it?
It will depend. I actually got a request from Moraga. They're getting both STP and CMAQ. They're getting Measure J TLC funding and have their own funding. Originally we programmed some of their Measure J funds in this fiscal year and some in the next one to match the construction, what we proposed for construction for the federal funds. Since that's gotten moved out to 2020, got moved out a year. Let's just put it that way. Can't remember the exact year. They can still ask for the PE funds that they were going to, for this fiscal year. That won't affect it, but they can ask for it. We'll have it available, but they won't be able to match the federal funds and do the actual construction they were going to do with the federal funds until that's available to them.
Right.
And I probably will go through the process of reprogramming everything to, if you've got Measure J funds with and federal funds together.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? All right, thank you. Moving on, item 4, Town of Danville's their streets and roads preservation request for approval for the 100% design peer review. Stephanie? Oh, it should be on consent? Okay, well, it's on the regular agenda right now, but I guess just for...
Yeah, well, I can just give a quick summary. Basically, it's a Measure C project that we have a rule. The board had a deadline for expenditure of Measure C dollars in June of this year, so they're moving forward, and it also has OBAG money, so they should be going out to bid in the next month or so in order to expend the Measure C funds, and they're ready. Ready to go out for construction bidding. They're seeking peer review approval so that can go to the board and continue with the process of allocating or appropriating the Measure C funds.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, it's on the regular agenda items, so do I have a motion to accept their comments and move on?
So moved.
Moved by Paul. Second by Jerry. All in favor? Say aye. And thank you for City of Brentwood County, Contra Costa County, and San Ramon staff for stepping up and helping out on the peer review. All right, moving on to item number 5, review draft 2017 multimodal transportation service objective monitoring report. Matt.
Thank you. As you remember, a couple of meetings ago, we brought to you the results of the 2017 CMP congestion management program monitoring results. All the data was collected in the spring of 2017. At the same time, we also monitored the action plan MTSO's multimodal transportation service objectives. There are some locations in common, so it just made sense to do it all at once. However, the CMP results are all level of service at intersections and freeway segments, whereas the MTSOs do contain some level of service at intersections and on roadway segments, but also contain many different types of objectives that we had to monitor, and it took a bit more time to analyze, so that's why we're bringing it to you now. So I'll just go over what the MTSOs are. They are what you establish in the action plans for your local routes of regional significance. They are performance measures that are established for each route. They must be quantifiable and measurable, monitorable. And so I'll go over some of the, we did run into a couple of interesting cases where results were either, we weren't able to get results or data, or the data just didn't provide a lot of information. We can discuss that in more detail at the RTPCs. The goal of today is to get this data out to the RTPCs so they can look at it and focus on their own action plans and subregions. But basically, I'll go through the different types of MTSOs that were monitored. As I mentioned, intersection level of service. We did delay index, which is basically difference between free flow and the congested speeds on the freeways. Most of the freeways in the county are represented with that MTSO, as well as some arterials in La Miranda, Pleasant Hill Road, and San Pablo Dam Road / Camino Pablo. Several streets have side street signal cycle delay, which is basically when someone approaches a major arterial at a signalized intersection, it's the number of cycles they have to sit through in order to make a right or left turn onto that major street. And that includes Ignacio Valley Road, Treat, San Pablo Dam Road, and Pleasant Hill Road. In La Miranda, we have a BART MTSO, which is basically the peak loading factor, which is the number of people standing versus the number of seats on the car, so kind of the ratio of people standing to sitting. And like I said, that's just in the La Miranda area, so for the Lafayette and Orinda stations. We have average speed on on the major central county arterials. We have HOV lane usage on SR4 in East County and I-80 in West County. Average vehicle occupancy on 580 and 680 in Tri-Valley, and a newly established MTSO in La Miranda for average vehicle occupancy. Duration of congestion down on 680, that's the section south of between 580 and 84, or actually it goes all the way down to Fremont, I believe, in Tri-Valley. Volume to capacity ratio on arterials in Central County and Tri-Valley. Transit boardings in Tri-Valley, in Tri-Valley, also Tri-Delta service area and BART service area. Collision free. These last four I'm about to mention are not actually MTSOs, but were additional data that we were requested to collect by Tri-Valley and La Miranda, and that includes collision frequency on Pleasant Hill Road and San Pablo Dam Road, and also on the Iron Horse Trail down in the Tri-Valley. Pedestrian and bicycle volumes on the Iron Horse Trail. Arterial crossings, 5 were selected in Tri-Valley area. Pavement condition on the Iron Horse Trail in Tri-Valley, as well as major arterials down there, and average trail user delay at major road crossings on the Iron Horse Trail. So as you go through the report, this is the draft report. You'll see it's marked preliminary on every page. We go through the MTSOs, the methodology for both collecting the data and analyzing the data, and then we get into actual results. I'm not going to go into detail on those. When we come to the RTPCs, we will kind of, our focus will be on the MTSOs that didn't achieve their standard. There were a lot more this time than last time. Last time we collected data on these was in 2013. So we have comparisons to the 2013 and the 2017 data. That's just for comparison, but we've highlighted where they exceed their threshold or their standard. And it's in a lot more locations than it was in 2013. So basically when you go through the report, the highlighted areas are the ones that that exceeded their standard. You'll see in Tri-Valley there are some areas that are blank, and those are intersections that we rely on those Alameda County cities for the data, since there's several dozen intersections, and this time around they did not have data collected for those intersections. So I'm going to talk to TVTC and see what they want to do about that, if there's some way we can go out and collect that data for those missing intersections. CCTA didn't want to take on all of the cost for those since they are in a different county, but they are part of the Tri-Valley Action Plan. So we'll have those discussions at TVTC. So, like I said, the majority are level of service. Then you get into delay index or volume over capacity. Then we get into the average stop delay and side street wait times, roadway speeds, and then we get into some transit ridership, HOV utilization, and then the BART peak loading factor, as I mentioned. We did have some exceedances this time around, but I think that's to be expected based on BART ridership. We have bus ridership, and then on at 3.4 on page 51 or 5-58 of your packet are those additional performance measures I mentioned, where this is all new data that we've collected for the first time. They may become full MTSOs based on the RTPC review of this data. And I'll go to table 28, which is the average trail user delay. It sounded like a good MTSO, but basically when we started trying to measure it, basically it's just, these are signalized intersections. Basically it's just the signal time is the delay for trail users. If there were like 300 bicyclists approaching at the same time and they couldn't all make it through one signal, then we might have an issue, but we don't know of any locations where everyone can't clear the intersection on one signal. So that's an MTSO, which we may suggest either not, or it's not an MTSO, but it's a performance measure that we may suggest not collecting in the future, or coming up with some other way of kind of getting at the magnitude of people crossing that intersection, or the impact to trail users. But right now they're waiting for a signal. And then let's see, the last one, table 30, no, sorry, on page 5-62, frequency of lane closures in La Miranda. It's actually supposed to be frequency of unplanned lane closures, so for emergencies and so forth. There isn't a good data source for that. The cities aren't collecting it, Caltrans isn't collecting it, so we kind of drew a blank when trying to come up with those numbers. So when we go back to La Miranda, we'll suggest, do you want to start collecting that at the city level, or is this something worth collecting? And these were established for or so years ago. So maybe at the time it seemed like a good idea, but when it came down to actually collecting it, it didn't work out as well as we thought. So those are types of discussions we'll have at the RTPCs, in addition to focusing on the MTSO, the particular MTSOs where routes did not meet their standard or exceeded their standard. And then that conversation will probably include, is this an MTSO you want to continue with? Because especially in light of SB 743 and the change in level of service, maybe you'll want to discard that MTSO if you've got a ton of exceedances. Maybe you want to keep it because you want to know where you've still got those level of service exceedances. It may prompt a conversation if you want to add new actions to address the MTSOs. So there's a lot of discussions that can spark, whether you keep an MTSO, change an MTSO, or add new actions to address the MTSO now that you've got all these exceedances of the standard, or you could change the standard. Those are all conversations that we hope to have at the RTPCs. So we will clean up the tables a bit before going to the RTPCs. I apologize that some of these are a little difficult to understand. If you have any questions in the meantime, I can on particular MTSOs, I can address those today or offline. But we hope to, like I said, have more detailed conversations in the next month or two at the RTPCs.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt?
I do.
Leah?
2 comments and 1 question. One is, it was nice to see these, I guess I'll call them experimental TSOs. I think that's helpful. For the executive summary, I feel like it's too summary. I think it could be more user-friendly by including, like sometimes it just mentions like, oh, there's 3 intersections that didn't meet. Well, list the intersections then. Or give me, if it's too long of a list, put the page reference in there. But I found it really frustrating because I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, that was my first comment to the consultant, to beef that up. Because normally when there's a long report, I just include the executive summary in the packet. And I couldn't get away with that on this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate that comment.
Then on the packet page 5-552, there's table 18 and there's an asterisk. And I'm not sure what the asterisk goes to, and I don't understand the asterisk. So I'm hoping you can explain that.
Are you talking about kind of the footnote at the very bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was a reference to the 2013 MTSO report, monitoring report. So I think it's trying to tell you that between 2017 and 2012, there was a huge increase, or a big increase.
So most of the change under the observed column is occurring between 2007.
Occurred prior to what's in this report. But I will clarify that.
Thanks.
When I bring it to WICTAC.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes. Again, I have a question and a couple comments. The question is on table 24. There's some shaded boxes under ridership per revenue service hour. What are those shaded boxes representing as opposed to non-shaded? Because this didn't have a threshold.
I do remember asking the consultant that at one point. I believe it's those that are below the MTSO.
There are, but again, that was just a we were just trying to keep track of what it was. We didn't have a.
Right, yeah, no, that does, yeah, I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
So this was just a report, kind of a for information only. Okay.
Just didn't understand the shading. And then Table 24, if we could mention that this is for the Tri-Delta Transit Services in East County.
Yes, Tri-Delta.
And then the last, actually, I also noticed on Table 28, we don't have the units. I assume these are in seconds, the average delay, trail user delay.
Correct.
So I think we should label that as in seconds. And then on Table 30, Pavement Condition Index, PCI. I think this should be result of pavement condition index, parentheses, PCI. So we understand what PCI is.
Yes.
And that's it.
Thank you.
All right, James?
Just one question. Table 9, which is page 33 or 540, I was just curious to understand the difference between observed and 2017 results.
Yeah, I was just looking at that myself before I got up here, and I believe the observed is 2017, so I think that was the 2017 results is supposed to be 2013 results, because I believe we were only monitoring a few of those intersections in 2013 and expanded it, but I will check on that as well. But the observed should be the actual 2017 results.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Matt, just in terms of the level of service changes under CEQA, those wouldn't require an RTPC to give these up, but they just might want to for sake of streamlining how they do their analysis and their metrics.
That's correct. They're certainly allowable. We went to the RTPCs last year to kind of, provide them some more information on the changes to CEQA and how the action plans might better support the changes. So there are ideas we've floated out there, but it's certainly up to each RTPC if they want to keep those, they could keep them as full MTSOs or just keep them as kind of informational items.
Right.
But yeah, because this is a local planning document, they are allowed to keep it. But it is also analyzed under CEQA as part of the countywide transportation plan. So anything we can do in the action plans to be, consistent with SB 743 is probably a good thing.
Okay, thanks.
Jerry?
Just looking at Table 31 on 5-61, you reference Pleasant Hill Road and Camino Pablo, but then in the table you talk about San Pablo Dam Road, vehicle crash, 0 crashes for 4 straight years. I don't think we get out of a month without one. So Table 31.
31. Oh, okay. Right here.
So I don't know if it's supposed to be San Pablo Dam Road or Camino Pablo based on the topic.
Well, it should be, it's both Camino Pablo / San Pablo Dam Road.
And then that data's wrong.
It does look pretty low for all those years. We pulled this out of Tim's or the Switters. So I'll have to go back and look at that. I think I was the one who actually pulled that data. So
one of the problems with Switters in this area is it doesn't. They don't always get reported.
Right, because Switters I think is inputted by CHP. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I may make a suggestion, I'll make note, but if you could email the jurisdiction, their local police department may have more finite data.
Yeah, that would probably be a better source for these local arterials, so I will do that. Really? You don't think it's 0 over the last 4 years?
Pablo? It probably hasn't been 0 since 2:30.
Yeah, you can probably pull up the CHP website right now and see San Pablo Dam Road on it.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. If not, do I have a motion to move this along to the RTPCs for review and additional comments?
So moved.
And there's,
Thanks for the feedback.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Jerry. All in favor, say aye. Item number 6, release of the draft 2018 Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Brad, and I do have a speaker card here from Bruce Olson from Bike East Bay. But Brad, go ahead.
Okay. There we go. Let me get this one right here. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Brad Beck, Contra Costa Transportation Authority staff, and I'm here to get you to recommend releasing the proposed draft 2018 Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. The plan is built on the 2003 and the 2009 plan. There's a number of things that have happened since then. A number of jurisdictions have adopted their own plans. There have been a number of new bicycle and pedestrian design guidelines released. There's been a lot of more interest in walking and bicycling and support for it in the community. And that's a lot of the reason why we're updating it. This time around, we did a lot of outreach, a lot more outreach than we've done in the past, and I think some of it pretty interesting and some new techniques that we'd support other people doing. We have our own website, keepcontracostamoving.net, and on that we had a website survey. We had 358 people respond to it, an online interactive map, some pop-up events at sort of unusual locations, farmers markets, etc., places where people are already at rather than making them come to a special meeting. We had an online town hall that I thought was pretty successful. We did a white paper that we took out to the RTPC tax to get input, and we released a State of Walking and Bicycling report. Out of the online survey, we got a couple of themes that came out of it. People wanted improved bike ped crossings. They wanted separated bikeways, a fair amount of support for separation. They wanted closing gaps in facilities. They wanted drivers to pay more attention. They wanted enforcement of speed limits. They wanted a lot more bike parking, which was a new thing in our outreach efforts. They wanted to reduce speeds, and they wanted improved safe routes to school and to transit. The interesting thing about the interactive mapping is it was an interesting exercise, and we got some interesting responses. And I'll give you an example. One of the things we asked was, where did people like to ride their bikes? And they're not surprising places. A lot of it, the places were obviously recreational, Mount Diablo, for example. But some around downtown Walnut Creek or the BART stations and within communities. But you also saw, when you asked where they wanted improvements, you saw a lot of the same sort of locations. So people were familiar with those locations and they wanted improvements there. And you also saw a lot of clustering around major arterials and along freeways, 680, Central Avenue and 580 and 80 and El Cerrito, and some other major facilities like connecting the Richmond Greenway. And we got similar results for pedestrian responses. Where do you like to walk? Where do you want improvements? We did these two reports. They're on keepcontracostamoving.net, and they're appendices A and B in the proposed draft plan. From the RTPC tax, we got this is the things that came up the most. Identifying priorities, having a regional backbone network for bikeways, supporting and funding Complete Streets corridor studies, integrating bike ped planning with VMT reduction and SB 743 requirements, having best practice design guidelines, including ped crossing toolkit, guidelines for improving interchanges and intersections, and not surprisingly, innovative funding strategies. We're all looking for money. The proposed draft itself had the same chapters we had last time, and I'll focus on a couple of key updates, the goals and objectives, priority pedestrian areas, the low-stress countywide bikeway network, and strategies and actions that we want to carry out. So the goals, they're similar to last time. Not surprising. We want to encourage walking and biking. We want to increase safety. We want to create a connected, safe network. The new ones, we want to increase livability and attractiveness of communities, and we want to equitably serve all of Contra Costa's communities while ensuring that the public investments have the greatest benefits. And one thing about the third one is that last phrase, for all ages and abilities, and that's one of the themes of the plan, is to try to provide greater access and safety for people of all ages and abilities. We've identified 5 objectives that we want to monitor over time to see how well we're doing at implementing and achieving the goals of the plan. Increasing the share of walk-bike trips, reducing accidents and fatalities, increasing the number of miles of low-stress bikeways, increasing number of jurisdictions that have their own active transportation plans, integrating complete streets principles into the authority's own procedures and policies. And the strategies are similar to what we've had before, working together with you and having you work together with each other to design new facilities, innovate, educate, encourage, provide technical assistance, fund, monitor, and update our plans and procedures. The pedestrian facilities, we tried to be a little more systematic in identifying them. We used a number of criteria to identify places that had high residential or employment density, had a higher level of mixed use, that is high residential and retail or employment and retail, PDAs with high forecast growth, and then near transit and schools. And these are the areas we've identified. I'd say they're the usual suspects. They're not surprising. We've added a couple of sort of special districts where we know that there's a land use pattern and a street network design that encourages pedestrian use, but there isn't a particularly high forecast growth or density of growth. For example, downtown Brentwood, which does, if you've been there on a Saturday night, it does have a lot of pedestrian activity down there, and it has during other parts of the day as well. And planning for pedestrians, the plan encourages increasing density and mix of use. And this is something we heard from the outreach as well. There were a lot of people who said, you want us to walk more, get more densities close to where we are. Well-designed walkways, landscaping, street trees, and ADA improvements are all things that the plan encourages. And the best practices have suggestions and best practices for improving walkways, curb ramps, crossings, traffic calming, et cetera. For the bike facilities, there are a lot of new best practices out there. And here are 2 of them: the FHWA Separated Bike Lane Guide, the Urban Bikeway Design Guide from NACTO. Caltrans has, and the state have adopted a new Class 4 separated bikeway. So you can now have Class 4. The classes obviously are all mixed up. You would expect Class 4 to be closer to Class 1, but no, it's Class 4, which just confuses everyone. Nonetheless, it is something we've tried to reflect in the plan. And another concept we try to reflect is this new idea of level of traffic stress. This comes from the Mineta Transportation Institute, and it takes a number of factors: number of travel lanes, speed of traffic, number of vehicles, presence of bike lanes, the width of the bike lanes, and the presence of physical barriers between the bike lanes and the traffic. and it gives that roadway a score. And the score can be 1, which is very, very good and low stress, or 4, which is very, very not low stress, or anywhere in between. We've tried in the plan to try to focus on those LTS 1 or 2 facilities and try to get a network that's made up entirely of those, so that we can get to what's known as the interested but concerned, the 60% of the population who would like to ride their bike more frequently but need to have the facilities to make them feel comfortable doing that. Now, there 1% of the people are strong and fearless. They'll ride, maybe not willingly, but they'll ride on any kind of facility where they're allowed. And the enthused with confident, they'll ride a lot of places, but they love to have separated and clearly demarcated facilities for them. And then there's that 1/3 who just won't, for any number of reasons, bike. This came out of a study in Portland, but it's been confirmed throughout the U.S. These are the 8 criteria we used in 2009. We built on that and then added new low-stress facilities that have been added since. We removed a few segments that we didn't think were going to have much demand, and we're proposing new low-stress facilities on where they don't exist yet, where they're now LTS 3 or 4. And that's the network. It's the blue ones are existing LTS 1 or 2. They're primarily separate Class 1 facilities. In fact, they're entirely Class 1 facilities. And everything else, sometimes there's a facility it's marked, sometimes it's not. And the proposal is to eventually try to get to LTS 1 or 2 on those facilities. And one of the comments that members of the Bike Ped Advisory Committee made was that this is good, it would be great to get to 1 or 2, but if there are interim improvements to make it a little better, maybe get it from 4 to 3, that would be great. And the plan shouldn't prevent those kind of improvements to be made. So low-stress network could be made up of any of these: Class 1 bikeways, Class 2 buffered bike lanes, Class 3 bike boulevards if it's a really low-volume street, the new Class 4 separated bikeways, and improved cross-barrier connections, those especially across freeways. This is what the proposed network looks like now. Red and yellow are Class 3 or 4. This is what we think we can get to. And if we could get to this, what would we get? Well, this is an assessment that the consultants did that said if we could go from what we have now and get everything to LTS 1 or 2, how much would that make it? How many more things could an average bicyclist get to? And what the study found was that, for example, right now, the average person can get to about 14,000 jobs on a low-stress bikeway. If we turn the network over completely to 1 and 2, where they get it to about 38,000. For shopping centers, we go from 4 to 9. Parks 20 to 46. This is for the average person. Schools 12 to 30, and rail stations 1 to 2. So doubled the number of train stations you can get to using low-stress facilities. So this is just an example of the benefits that could occur if we could shift to 1 and 2. But it would be costly, and this is our estimate. Right now, the proposed network is 149 miles of low-stress facilities. We're proposing to add 513, and that would cost us only $1.1 billion. These are using average cost per mile for different kinds of facilities. So it's going to be plus or minus a number of percentage points. And support programs, I won't go through every one: educate, encourage, enforce, evaluate. Those are 4 of the 5 E's, and the other 5th one is engineering, which we covered in earlier chapters and in the best practices. And implementation, a lot of things we're already doing, updating the bike ped plan. Some things we want to focus on incorporating Complete Streets principles into the authority's policies and procedures. Implementing Vision Zero and systematic safety. That's something that was also in the recently adopted countywide transportation plan. Support for local efforts, which you're going to be key in implementing the plan and improving things for pedestrians and bicyclists. Let me go back one. One thing that we think is going to be important in the future that we didn't get a whole lot of positive response, some, from the RTPCs was curbside management. And we think that with the growth in Uber and Lyft and automated vehicles and who knows, drones and robot delivery from Amazon and Whole Foods, that the importance of curbside management is going to grow. Funding, obviously, we continue to do that, and monitoring. We're relying on local jurisdictions and agencies to adopt your own plans. We're funding some of them and have funded some to implement projects, increase bike parking, adopt new guidelines and standards, et cetera. And Caltrans BART also, there are things that they can do. We updated the funding sources and trying to match the improvements needed with the type of the funding program that would be best suited to fund those kinds of improvements, which we hope will be useful to staff people. And finally, here's another estimate of how much it would cost. This is just for projects that we know about. Right now, we've got about $1.4 billion in bike, ped, safe routes to school projects in our comprehensive transportation project list. And we estimated in the countywide transportation plan, we've got $172 million committed to those kinds of projects. That's only a shortfall of only $1.2 billion. And we estimated that we could get some new sources, perhaps through a new measure, that we might get another $790 million for those kinds of projects, leaving a shortfall of $444 million. Though probably since we don't know about some projects that would be needed to finish and complete the countywide bikeway network and make improvements in priority pedestrian areas, the cost of the project would probably increase, making the shortfall even greater. So where are we? We're at the draft plan stage, and we have a schedule for getting to a final plan today. You're reviewing it, taking it to the planning committee on March 7th, March 21st for the authority to release it. March and May, we're going to bring it to your RTPCs to review, both the TACs and the boards. And then in June and July, the Bike Ped Advisory Committee, the BPAC, the TCC, and PC will review a proposed plan, and we hope the authority adopt it in July of this year. So with that, and this nice picture of Mount Diablo, thank you. And if you have any questions and comments especially, let me know.
Thank you, Brad. Any comments or questions for Brad? Heather?
Going back to the slides where you were showing that if we went from a 4 to a 2, or, I don't have that
It's
right.
very
but
slow. I'm not sure why.
It didn't seem, and I'm just wondering if somebody took a look at that data, like going from 4 shopping centers to 9 or something like that. That just doesn't seem right. If you did all those improvements, that back one.
Whoops, I went back too fast. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, if you were to do, and then you said it was $1 billion worth of work or whatever, I mean, that just doesn't. it's not intuitive to me. That doesn't seem right to me, so I don't know if you just want to take a look at that, and I'm just,
Well, this is within 20 or 30 minutes for the average person. So this is averaged out over the whole county. The improvement, the benefits would be greater for some people who are closer to, who are within denser areas. So if you were already in a relatively dense area with a fair mix of uses, the benefits would be greater for you. But if you were in an area of lower density and uses that are further away, then the benefits wouldn't be quite as strong. That I have to, I'm not exactly certain.
yeah. I guess am I the only one that thinks that all that data seems wrong to me? It all seems low. It seems low even from when you go back a couple slides when you're at the red and all that, before you turn blue, it seems like you have better access even when we're in the red zones. I mean, just think about the Iron Horse Trail Corridor and, and all the stuff that we have out there now. We can access a lot of schools and a lot of shopping centers. So I just, it's just at first glance, so I guess would say take a look at it, but maybe no one agrees
Yeah,
with me.
I will check on those things.
Thank you. And then I had one more comment. I forgot it. Another comment. Another comment. I can't remember.
Through the chair.
All right. Yeah, Paul?
I had the same comment about these data didn't look right, but again, the explanation does make sense. It's an average improvement for a 20-minute ride in the county. So again, it's an average of the dense areas as well as the rural areas, all within a 20-mile rate or a 20-minute ride from that area. So if you really stop and think about what it's really showing, it does make sense. Although I don't think it's intuitive to the public. So I was hoping that we would get in more of an explanation with that table. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe just reiterate that. Maybe it's the best way, just another way to present that concept. Because, yeah, it doesn't seem like, just based on those numbers, it doesn't seem like it's worth it.
Let me talk to the consultants, and there's a better, the BPAC did ask for the plan to include some more information to explain where these numbers came from. I mean, relatively, it makes intuitive sense, I think, that if you provide low-stress facilities where you only have access to higher stress, that you're going to double the number of parks that you have accessible to you, and more than double the number of shopping centers, and more, almost triple the number of job locations or jobs that you have access to. Contra Costa is pretty spread out.
Yeah.
And if you try riding, my ride, I'm not a fast rider, but it takes me about 45 minutes to get from my house to here on a bicycle using pretty, low-stress facilities.
Except that one day.
Yeah, and it was a low-stress facility.
All right, any other questions from the commission? Leah?
I have, yeah. I'm wondering for the sections with all the maps of the existing facilities, and which West County jurisdiction staff submitted comments on that?
I don't have the list. What we asked for were GIS layers so we could update them.
I want to make sure that
I can't
our
remember
staff
the list.
people gave you information and that they've
Not
looked at
many.
this. Okay. So maybe you can get back to me with who.
Yeah, I've got
Who
it.
did and
We
who
have a
didn't?
spreadsheet on that.
Perfect. So there's a lot of aspirational goals and objectives here. I'm wondering what resources are going to be directed towards implementing these things. Like the Vision Zero sounds great. Where's the staffing going to be coming from to do that?
Well, a lot of the things that the authority is charged in the plan with doing are things that the authority staff would do, either using existing staff or using consultants. And we do have a tendency to use consultants to do different things. The Vision Zero, for example, it is an action that we're scheduled to do as part of the authority planning sections, but not just the planning section, work in the future. And that would apply both to the Vision Zero approach would apply to all forms of travel, not just bicycle and pedestrian. And it would be something that the planning section and the other parts of the authority probably using consultant resources. And that would be true for pretty much every action. And some of the ones, they'll be, for example, getting more local bike ped or active transportation plans. Those are things that we would help fund, and we have helped fund a number of them. One, City of Walnut Creek, for example, or City of San Ramon is doing one that's funded right now with TLC funding. So, it'll be done through a variety of ways and funded in a variety of ways as well.
And what are the actions for the Vision Zero? That maybe they're not set upon now, but like what ideas have been talked about?
Well, in the countywide transportation plan, the idea was that we work with the jurisdictions, with the board and with all the jurisdictions in the county to explore how we could come to some agreement on what a Vision Zero approach for Contra Costa would be. Most of the Vision Zero approaches that I know about are primarily done for single cities, and they tend to be major cities. Not always major, but San Francisco, New York, Stockholm is where it started. But in the United States, it's primarily been urban centers that have taken a Vision Zero approach, and there aren't that many suburban approaches. I know there are suburban cities who are starting to think about it. So trying to do one for a group of cities within a county, and it's primarily suburban in form with a lot of rural areas as well, will take a lot of thinking, and we have to figure out what that means exactly.
So this is just a concept. There's not any
Not yet.
proposals or ideas that have been floated about how to do this.
No. We didn't want to right at the moment presume that what the Vision Zero approach would be, other than it would be built on some systematic assessment of risk and why things are the way they are, why accidents occur, and that sort of thing.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Brad, I think you and I were the longest-serving members on the Safe Routes to Transit funding project that MTC and Transform did, and I wouldn't endorse everything that program funded, but I think it funded a lot of useful stuff, including in Contra Costa, at Concord Bard, and along the Ohlone Greenway, and in Pittsburgh, and so I guess I'm stating a hope that there's a way that program and funding ended, that there's a way to do some of those projects that get mostly pedestrians, in some cases more bicycles, access to BART stations and transit hubs, and would really support this kind of effort.
Heather?
Yeah, there was one project in San Francisco I didn't like, but okay.
Since it's kind of fresh on my mind these days, did the plan talk or contemplate about putting anything in there like how to get bikes, like Lime Bike? Right now, we've had a conversation, well, it's coming up, it's here.
They're here.
They're here, right. So, that's another maybe piece of it that it doesn't seem like this addresses.
That is another comment that we need to add some more stuff about bike share. Everyone was so focused on docked systems, and now this dockless bikes have shown up all over the place. in communities all over. Alameda, for example, has a pilot program it's doing, I think, south San Francisco as well. Seattle's gone entirely, they've gotten rid of their dock system and gone entirely to 3 spin, OFO, and line bike. So, and it's created issues. I've heard a lot of problems that having bikes all over the place has gotten a lot of people annoyed. So we understand that it's an issue, and we'll add some more things to the plan on it.
And then I just have one other, curbside management. What exactly do you mean? What does that include?
Well, it is what it is. It's managing what goes on at the curbs. San Francisco. Sorry. I know that was very vague. What is due process? It's the process that's due. I learned that in law school. Anyway, the first time I really saw it demonstrated was I was listening to a presentation from a person who's in charge of South of Market transportation study for the city of San Francisco. And their curbside management is already an issue. Because there's so much competition for space, there are people who want to put in parklets. There are people who want to put in bike corrals for bike parking along the street. They want to have drop-offs for delivery, FedEx, and all other sorts of delivery services. They want to have drop-offs for Uber and Lyft and taxi services. And there's just so much space, and other people want to park. And there's just really only so much space along the street frontage, and it's all about who gets to use what space when and for what purpose. And it's not such an issue here where there's I won't say abundant free parking, but there's relative to San Francisco, there's a lot of parking. So the conflicts haven't shown up quite so much, but I think probably in downtown Walnut Creek you'll start seeing it a lot more.
All right. With no other questions from the committee, I guess we'll hear from Bruce Olson from Bike East Bay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, engineers and planners. I am Bruce Olson, and I am speaking this afternoon for Bike East Bay. This bike plan is good as far as it goes. It won't make any enemies, and it won't do very much to change the status quo. I'd like to make 2 points about this plan. It says virtually nothing about electric bikes, which are poised to take off in the next couple of years. An electric bike is not just another bike. It's a substitute for a car. The CCTA just recently adopted the countywide transportation plan aimed mostly at automobiles, and they stressed in that plan that they want to get people out of single occupancy vehicles. A bicycle or an electric bike is the perfect opportunity. The bicycle can go 3 or 4 miles, or maybe a lot farther with an electric assist. Although my bicycle is not an electric assist bicycle, I rode 17 miles to get to this meeting this afternoon, including a distinctly non-low stress segment of Highway 4. Now my second point, and Brad has already alluded to this. The bike plan stresses the construction of low-stress bike paths, pun intended, and lanes, and other facilities that are suitable for anyone from age 8 to age 80. So far, so good. I've been hit by cars on 3 occasions, and I love low-stress bicycle facilities. But the plan says nothing about urging the plucking of low-hanging fruit by local jurisdictions. following NACTO guidelines. Here's an example. An arterial street with a marked shoulder. But you come to a major intersection, the marked shoulder goes away, and we've got a dedicated right turn lane. Let's, at the next grind and overlay, put in a green bike box. NACTO makes lots of suggestions about this. That'll do three things. That'll show the new bicyclist on their electric bike on their way to work or transit where they should be. It shows the motorist that they have the bicyclist has the right to be there, and it keeps the level of service up for this intersection. That's a win for all three. Everyone here knows, and I'm getting toward the end now, everyone here knows that we don't have bicycle facilities leading to every place in the county to which a bicyclist might want to go. This is of particular concern for the new bicyclist on their electric bike heading, oh, I already said that. All right, so in conclusion, I want to stress that Bike East Bay is not unhappy with this plan. It could be made better, but then every plan could be made better. However, we do not want jurisdictions to use this plan to justify not building bicycle facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other comments? Okay. So I guess we need a motion to pass this on to the, I guess, move it on to PC and the authority board and eventually releasing it to the RTPCs.
Yes, with addressing the issues that the TCC raised today.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Paul.
Second.
I'll go to my left. Second by Heather. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right. Any other business items? Stephanie.
I just have a plug for our annual Redefining Mobility Summit for our Momentum Station and the Autonomous Connected Vehicle Technology Summit that we have every year. Then it's going to be March 29th this year at Bishop Ranch in San Ramon. And being committee members, you are eligible for a cheaper ticket of $50. It includes a lunch and hearing all the workshops and speakers at an overflow area room that we have. But the original price or the full price is $359. So this is a pretty cool deal if you're free that day on March 29th. I have these cards here I'll leave in the back with the website on how you can register. So yeah, we're allowing committee members a $50 ticket and also 2 staff members from each Contra Costa County agency or jurisdictions. So just FYI.
Thank you very much. All right. With no other business, I guess this meeting is adjourned.
You said this says RM Redefining Mobility Summit. I thought you said something about autonomous. Right, exactly. Okay. Well, you're going down. Okay, so it's all okay.
here?
Oh. I'll hand this over to Christine. I guess that something.
Yeah, figured it'd probably catch somewhere.
In a separate room?
They have an overflow area. The main room is like a auditorium. They're thinking they will sell out. So they have this other bigger room on the just right adjacent that you can hear it, and there's a video feed. But then actually, if you want to work, it might be good if you're not. I saw last year. I saw people with their laptops and just kind of.
Listening and
Listening
working
in, and then if you want, you're interested, you can be more attentive, and if you want to just, and it includes a lunch. It's pretty.
And you get to ride the shuttle.
I think is it going to be? I didn't hear this. I don't know.
Last time. It was there last time.
It's testing this for.
Actually, it's breakfast and lunch.
No.
That'll be that'll probably be
I will say-
Alex Mayor's.
Yeah,
I don't know if they'll let you
I
know.
think it's
Touch it.
$50.
I tell you, those Teslas
If you
is
go
cool.
on the website, you can log in.
You start seeing them around town now, the Model 3s. Yeah, I think that's it.
You know what country has the highest per capita ownership of Teslas?
They'll show who's going to be at who's the speakers.
Oh, yeah. Online they would.
Any guesses?
But I think they're still.
Of what? Of Teslas. Highest per capita ownership of Teslas.
Iceland.
Close.
No, so that's what I call like.
Can't get much closer.
Norway?
Norway, yes.
Yeah, they got
And
lots
it's
of
the
oil.
oil, the oil money is subsidizing the purchases of electric vehicles.
So what was the project you remember from?
Well, it wasn't because I disliked the project. I shouldn't have put it quite that way. It's because I didn't think it had much of a nexus.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you're supposed to have a nexus
Right,
to
right,
the
right,
bridges.
right.
So what was it? It was bus stop improvements near the Balboa Park.
Yeah.
I kept arguing. What is the nexus to the bridges?
Right. I mean, it was sort of a San Francisco film. I mean, I thought
Sort of.
Well, I kept arguing for things. It was all over the place. It was like, well, wait, yeah, this one's way out. There was one in the back of it, and it's like, yeah, the ridership numbers aren't great, but you're going to make the conditions better. But they got a couple grants at Concord that I think really helped, leading up from like.
I think there was one around the BART station.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
yeah.
I can't remember the other one.
It's just like that was funding stuff that was really. There weren't other sources for it because it didn't fall into the.
Yeah, it was. I really thought that they did a thoughtful job of Transform and East Bay Bike Coalition at the time.
Right.
Of going through the process, whether the results were as good as I thought they should have been, I don't know. But
well, you can give people criteria, and then
yeah.
Yeah.
Still, I'm still kind of burned.
No, I remember we did. It funded a bunch of stuff at Balboa Park. It's like, yeah, it's a critical element, but spread this out.
So right now there isn't. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And I feel like,
No, it looks interesting, and so I probably will apply.
Yeah. At least from when I first started, pretty low.
Well,
Yeah. But even outside, like sometimes they try to get you on advisory committees. I haven't heard of it.
no, I would. I mean, that type of committee sounds good to me personally.
Right. And what I found interesting is when I first joined, we were doing the one in LSU. And when this group reviews a lot of like the general.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, yes, yeah.
So they never. So. Or just looking at, right now, we did a review of what is the highway center, and we looked at it around and we made comments on how the design should be modified. Like, they kind of had some weird things where, like, how the bike really do this.
Okay, yeah, no, I most likely will apply, but I'll let you know.
Okay, good.
But thank you for forwarding. I think I have like 2 weeks or something more weeks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. All right, see you later.
See you, Leah. Oh, Nathan. Crazy, I should have gotten it right away when you said. Where is it from? AC Train. Nathan landed that. I was thinking Martin landed down, Nathan landed. This is like crazy nephew. Yeah. All right. Oops. We're being
Are you going March 1st? Have some cocktails?
I don't know about there. No.
Oh, come on. There's going to be something close to Bud Light.
It's some water